Lesson 125, percent of a number. For today's lesson, we are going to start with a situation. So let's imagine that one spring day, the weather was getting kind of warmer, and 50% of the grade 6B class decided to wear shorts to school. And if all 28 students were at school, how many students were wearing shorts? Okay, so in order to understand percent of a number, it's good to think about it in a situation like this. So what we really want to know is, what is 50% of 28? Now, I chose nice, easy numbers so that you could do this one in your head so that you can understand what we're going to be doing here. So if you think about 50%, 100% is, you can think of it like a whole. 50% is half of 100%. So really what we're trying to find is, what is half of 28? And you should be able to mental math that. Our answer is going to be 14. Okay, but let's go over the steps for when you cannot use mental math, how you would find a percent of a number. So let's take our example, 50% of 28. First of all, the of is a nice big clue to us as to what we have to do, because of in math always means multiply. So we know we are going to have to do some multiplication. Now, you may be tempted to just think, oh, 50% of 28, I'll just do the of as a multiply. I'll do 50 times 28. Wrong. Do not do that. If you multiplied 50 by 28, you would end up with more students than there are in grade 6B, and your answer would make no sense. However, we still have to multiply. We still have 28 students. So what you actually have to do is remember what we learned a couple of days ago, which is that 50% has a decimal equivalent, right? Remember taking the decimal, bumping it back 2 spaces, same as dividing it by 100. So we end up with 0.5, which is the decimal equivalent to 50%. And now if I take that decimal equivalent and I multiply it by 28, we end up with, I don't know what's happening here. My marker changed. That's a 0. And do your zeros. We end up with 140 on the bottom. And then you have to remember that because there is one decimal place in your question, you have to make sure that there is one number behind a decimal in your answer. We've done that before. So put a decimal between your 4 and your 0, and you end up with what we ended up with in mental math, which is 14. All right, so to find percent of a number, really what you have to do is take the decimal form of your percent and then multiply it by your number, and then you will come to your answer. And here is an equation that's going to be very, very helpful for you today and in the coming days for math. So it might be a good idea to write it nice and big somewhere. Percent times whole equals part. So what we just did in our other example is we took the 50% in its decimal form, we multiplied it by the whole, or the total number of students, and then we found the part or the piece of them that were wearing shorts. All right, and it works the exact same way even if you have different numbers. So for instance, let's say you had an example where you had to find 17% of 300. Well, it's not so easy to just look at that and quickly do some mental math and figure out the answer. So you'd have to use percent times whole equals part. You think your decimal bumping back, because we need it, or that percent in our decimal form. Of becomes multiply. Our 300 stays the same. And then you simply do your multiplication. So 7 times 0, 0, 0, 21. Don't forget your placeholder. 1 times 0, we got 0 again twice. And then 1 times 3 is 3. Oops, I'm running out of space. And because we have two numbers that are behind a decimal place, we need two numbers behind our decimal. So our answer becomes 51. All right, so keeping in mind your knowledge of how multiplication works, making sure that you are setting up your equations where you take your percent, you put it into its decimal form like we did a few days ago, and then you multiply it by the whole number, and then you should come to your correct answer. But if any of that was confusing and you need my help, as always, you can contact me. I am happy to help you.